This is the Tamron 150 to 500 millimeter f5 to 6.7 lens. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? It's a beast of a lens, and in this video I'm going to tell you more about it and include lots of sample photos and videos so you can make up your mind if this is the right Sony telephoto lens for you. Hello friends, and welcome back to the studio. Today we're in the editing section of my studio. This right here is the computer where I do a majority of the editing for the videos that we post on YouTube. But yeah, we're here today with this Tamron lens, and as I mentioned, it is definitely a beast. I mean, it's relatively compact considering the focal length that it covers. It's 8.5 inches when it's fully compressed like this, but when you extend it out, you can see that it gets a lot longer, and it's also really heavy. It's a little over 4 pounds, which is quite a bit considering that you don't even have the camera body yet attached to the lens. So yeah, it's a super hefty lens, and it's a lens that I didn't even know that I needed, because prior to this lens, the longest lens that I owned was the 100 to 400 millimeter lens. I actually have it right here. This is the Fujifilm equivalent to that lens. Sony does make that lens, and their version is, I think, over $2,000. So it's a really expensive, but typically that's what a lot of people like me use for their super telephoto lens. Now, in my experience, I've been pretty happy with my 100 to 400 millimeter lens. However, if you can have an extra 100 millimeters on their long end, then you might as well take it, right? So that's one of the many reasons why I'm so excited for this Tamron lens. So this Tamron lens is for Sony E-mount cameras. It works with both full-frame cameras and also APS-C cameras, such as the Sony a6000. If you do shoot with an APS-C camera, then you have an even tighter crop. So it goes from 225 millimeters to 750 millimeters, which is just crazy. Can you imagine shooting at 750 millimeters? To help you shoot at those really zoomed in focal lengths, there is vibration compensation, or VC, built into the lens. So that really helps stabilize your footage as you're filming videos or shooting photos. And that's really, really important with telephoto lenses. This lens has another really cool built-in feature for helping you shoot at zoomed in focal lengths, and that is this tripod collar that has a foot that not only has the standard 1/4 inch tripod thread that you'll find on most telephoto lenses like this, but it has an Arca Swiss plate. So you can just slide this lens on top of an Arca Swiss mount and not have to bother with the tripod plate. That's a super cool feature that I really hope to see on other big telephoto lenses coming out in the future. So because this lens does extend and get even longer as you zoom in, there is a way to lock it in case you want to lock in your focal length. So there's two ways to do that. First of all, there's a lock switch here that you can enable, and that prevents the lens from sliding and changing its focal length. You can also kind of zoom in, and then if you grasp this front barrel here, you see that you pull it out and the silver ring is seen. And so when that happens, that also locks the lens into a certain focal length. And this is kind of annoying, I would say, because it's very easy to accidentally, lock your lens as you're zooming in and out. So I'm not a huge fan of this feature, but it's an interesting feature to have on this lens. The build quality of this lens is really, really great considering it's not all metal, which in this case I'm really grateful for because this lens is already pretty heavy. So if it had any more metal to it, it would be even heavier. So there is some plastic and also some rubber, but it is moisture resistant. So it's not quite fully waterproof, but you can take it out, and I would say a light rain, and still be able to shoot with it just fine. So on that note, let's talk about image quality for both photos and for videos. In terms of color, you're getting your standard Sony colors when you're shooting with this lens. And for sharpness, I would say it really depends on what focal length you're shooting with, and also if you're using an extra stabilizer. Even though this lens does have vibration compensation built in, I would say that you're still better off using it with a monopod or a tripod, because when you're shooting at super zoomed in focal lengths, you really need that extra stability. So I'm out here at Ocean Shores in Washington State, and I've got the brand new Tamron 150 to 500 millimeter lens on my Sony a7R III, and we're trying to shoot some wildlife. We've got lots of birds. We've seen some pelicans flying by, and also some people out in the distance. So let's shoot some photos and videos and see what we can get with this lens. long as you're shooting with a monopod or a tripod or some kind of physical stabilizer, then you can expect some really sharp and really great images coming out of this lens. So finally, let's talk about price. This is not a cheap lens. It's $1,400 US, but it is relatively cheap considering the focal range that you get, because the Sony lenses that are offering, 100 to 400 millimeters or even 200 to 600 millimeters, those lenses are really, really expensive. So they're like over $2,000. So Tamron is giving you a pretty good deal considering that it's letting you shoot it up to 500 millimeters with this lens. So I think it's a pretty great lens for landscapes, wildlife, and anything action-oriented. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Would you try this lens out, or do you have another go-to telephoto lens for your Sony camera? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.